Get the ultimate in body armor protection from Fortress Survival, LLC. Get this multi-cam plate carrier front and back, 2 10x12 level 3 trauma plates, 2 6x6 side plates, all level 3 NIJ lab certified. High quality performance, hardcore protection for the ultimate prepper and survivalist in your family. Hard hitting! Fortress Survival, LLC. Get all of your body armor and survivalist related supplies and gear from Fortress Survival. Click the link below right now. Hey everybody, I'm Christopher Green. You're tuning into AMTV Alternative Media Television. It's Monday, June 22nd, 2015, and the Greece Extend and Pretend campaign continues. Isn't this unbelievable? They constantly tell us there's a deadline. There's a deadline on Monday. There's a deadline on Tuesday. There's a deadline on Wednesday. There's a deadline this week. There's a deadline a month from now. And then they constantly extend and pretend. This tertiary round 3 bailout being considered by the Troika, the ECB, Angela Merkel. What are they going to do? Tsipras, the new Syriza leader, is he able to negotiate these bailout terms, potentially raise the retirement age of the citizens of Greece, men and women? Potentially, will this affect their pensions? Will it affect all these social programs? What will the Troika do? What will Angela Merkel do? You know, at the end of the day, they're going to politicize this event. Again, they're going to constantly extend and pretend it. I think they're going to come to some kind of additional agreement and then politicize those terms. Because again, the Troika, the ECB, has to be all in. If they let Greece fall, then potentially they would let Portugal fall, or they would let Spain fall, or they would let Italy fall. So the entire integrity, really, of the European Union is centered around Greece. So should Greece stay or should it go? Well, it should go. They should revert back to the drachma. They should fall out. It should be a Greek tragedy. It should be the Achilles heel of the European Union, but I don't think the Troika is going to allow it, at least in the short run. Again, the Troika has to be all in this scenario. The European Union, the ECB, has to be all in to provide that assurance for the capital markets, to provide the assurance to Wall Street here in the United States of America. Now, of course, this will end in chaos. This will end in systemic collapse, but I believe it will end with the entire and total destruction of the Eurozone itself. Not just Greece, not just a single nation, but all member states. I believe there's 19 in the Eurozone, all tied into this single currency. And you see, Greece's problem, really the only problem they have is they can't print their own debt. They can't issue their own currency like the Federal Reserve here can in the United States of America, or the ECB can do with the euro. Because they can't independently print their currency into infinity, that's the only reason they're running into too much debt. And they can't make the interest payments on the old debt. You know, a common misconception of these bailouts is that the first bailout and the second bailout and potentially the third bailout is going to the Greek people, the people of Greece. That is totally and utterly false. All the bailout funds are actually going back into the banksters' pockets, going back to the ECB, going back to the Troika, because again, they're the ones that are holding this hot potato of debt. And the big banks in this country and around the world and in Europe never, ever take a loss. In fact, I'll hear people tell me this. They'll argue with me, and they're very apologetic. They're like apologists that like getting screwed over by the banksters will say, you know, Christopher, in 2008 and 2009, the big banks in this country had no other option but to make sure that the whole world didn't come to an end in 2008 and 2009. After securitizing trillions of dollars worth of these financial instruments, mortgage-backed securities, CDOs, the derivatives market, etc., making trillions on the upside, selling debt to anybody with a pulse, and then basically not even asking but stealing trillions of dollars worth of bailouts so big banks in this country, too big to fail, like JP Morgan Chase, could unfairly swallow certain banks like Washington Mutual and become even bigger and larger behemoths than they are today, posing a greater systemic risk and a greater problem to our system. And you see, the problem in Europe, the problem in the United States of America is structural. We are structurally insolvent. It's exactly why there will be some kind of black swan event in the not too distant future, just like what was experienced in 08 and 09, because nothing's been fixed. Just because the stock market's trading at all-time highs and interest rates are held down at zero indefinitely doesn't mean there's truly been a recovery. It doesn't mean that any of the problems have been addressed. We're hearing this from money managers all over the world right now that are saying you should physically hold cash. Some are in addition to precious metals, in addition to gold and silver. Maybe 25% of your portfolio, for example, is in gold and silver. Money managers saying the other 25% should be under your mattress, whether or not it's dollars or it's euros or it's Swiss francs or it's any other type of currency that you could potentially hold. The Canadian dollar, for example. You know, I think that the takeaway here for anybody that actually still has any money left that hadn't been already raped by the system, hadn't been stolen from in 2008 and 2009 with this engineered wealth transfer, I think the takeaway is to diversify as much as you can. You know, maybe, for example, that's 25% in stocks in certain sectors. Maybe you buy the oil patch, for example, or you buy beaten down companies and have some exposure to equities. Maybe the other 25% of that is in bonds of utilities, companies that have physical assets like land, real estate. It could be like a water utility or something like that. Bonds. The other 25% could be in gold and silver. The other 25% could be in land. Again, I talk about this all the time. You can invest in collectibles. You could invest in fine art. The wealthy, the elite around the world are buying things like collectible cars. You know, dropping $2 million and then flipping these cars in 5 to 10 years. So I think the takeaway is diversification, because at some point everybody knows, especially the elites in this country that fly off to Davos, to fly off to Cannes, and all these, you know, hobnobbing events, they know what's coming. Just like a good minority of them, but the majority of this group knew 2008 and 2009 was coming. You know, people like Jamie Dimon, who are billionaires today, who's a billionaire banker as a result, and benefiting from these multi-trillion-dollar bailouts to bail out his company that he was running during the heart of the crisis that caused the crash in the first place, that again created these synthetic instruments and derivatives. This fiction that promoted the collapse of equity markets in 2008 and 2009. You know, I also see bonds rallying once again. I think the Treasury market, even though that's, you know, the worst investment to own long term, I think that Treasury bonds will probably rally again, just from sheer demand from a potential black swan event taking place in the not too distant future. So diversification is key, folks. The structural problems haven't been solved. It's only gotten worse. There's only more debt on the balance sheet of the federal government, of the Federal Reserve. The problems are only worse. And we're seeing this culturally. We're seeing this, for example, with the Dylann Roof shooting, these escalating racial tensions being promoted by Obama and the White House. People want to know why I didn't talk about it? Because it falls right into the lap of CNN's bullshit racist narrative. It falls right into the lap of the President of the United States, Barack Obama's bullshit racist narrative. Let me give you an example. When someone says, let's say on CNN, you're watching CNN, they say, we're going to talk about race. Let's talk about racism, Christopher. What is the first thing that comes to mind into that public sphere of consciousness for those people that still actually have a brain and are thinking and aren't, you know, totally propagandized by the bullshit? Brain not turned off. The first thing that you think about is whites attacking blacks. That's how they've built and created the narrative. You don't think about blacks attacking whites. That was actually something Dylann Roof was right about. He said he couldn't understand post the Trayvon Martin trial and post that tragedy why the mainstream media didn't report on the countless acts of violence and murder, grotesque acts committed by blacks against whites. And the reason is it doesn't fall into the laps of the racist agenda being pushed by the mainstream media. The racist agenda being pushed by Barack Obama, who dropped the N-word on a podcast. This is headline news I saw on CNBC before making this video. Again, his goal is to incite those cultural racist tensions. It's the same goal of the mainstream media. It's the same goal of CNN. It's why there was so much fanfare and there was a media circus around Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman, for example, and the countless other cases we've reported on over the past several years. It's why those marginalized in our society, that by the way are on drugs like SSRIs and other types of drugs, etc., being issued and promoted by big pharma, profiting in the billions and billions of dollars, people like Dylann Roof are cracking. It's why we see society cracking. Nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to talk about what this says about our society, that these people are a reflection of this diseased society, playing violent video games. Nobody wants to talk about that, the fact that most of these video games basically equip you with guns and bombs to murder people in a virtual world, and then people take this into the real world. Or we look at violent movies like Django Unchained, for example, which is hugely popular, and other movies that are up for Oscars and win Oscars based solely on gun violence, for example. But you never hear the Obama administration attacking Hollywood. You never hear the Obama administration attacking the video game industry or anything like this. No, they just continue to build the racist narrative that blacks are oppressed in this country. Even though we have an African American president, even though I think most people realize that there are good blacks, there are good whites, there are good Asians, there are good Hawaiians, there's good people of all races, cultures, religions, etc. We should be past race at this point. So why does the mainstream media keep bringing it up? Why do they keep inciting these tensions? Why does Obama continue to try to divide and conquer America? Well, it's because it's a tactic. It's a strategy. It's a control mechanism. Basically, again, to divide and conquer the people, to distract the masses from the real atrocities occurring. Illegal wiretapping and spying, courtesy of the NSA, illegal anti-constitutional wars overseas, a new Cold War, an arms race. All this propaganda being spewed by the White House, their press corps, and the Obama administration regarding Russia and Iran and the nuclear program and nukes. All of this leading to war. I mean, people want to know, where does this lead? How does this unfold? It unfolds in war. It unfolds with a reset. What happens when the European Union finally disintegrates and collapses, and Greece needs a fourth, and then a fifth, and then a sixth bailout, and then a seventh, and then an eighth? At some point, it's all going to end. And it's exactly why I think the Troika goes all in with Greece. Again, when this thing finally unravels, the entire Eurozone is going to unravel at once, and that's when they'll integrate the New World Order. That's when they'll integrate this new system, a new currency, very likely could be digital, a new solution to the problem that caused the original problems. Well, the people, if they're blinded by the actions, maybe so engrossed in this artificial racism being created at the moment, they might not even understand why and how this is taking place. They'll essentially give these bankers, Wall Street, and Washington politicians even more power post the next collapse. That's what's totally insane to me. That the masses will apologize for these criminals, say, well, they had to do something to save our system. They have to do something to save the Eurozone, while they roll over the peasants, while they roll over you and me, while the middle class is utterly destroyed. The elites know this. They talk about it all the time. There is no middle class left in America. It has completely been and utterly rolled over. That's what the giant wealth transfer was in 2008 and 2009. The engineered bailouts, the engineered collapse, etc. These same institutions are the ones that caused it. And they're the same ones we're supposedly trusting to provide the solution, while they reap all the profits. They reap all the gains. I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable. You know, no wonder we see riots in Greece. No wonder there's 20% unemployment, not just in Greece, but here in the United States. Real unemployment rate, just like Donald Trump says, is arguably 20% here in the U.S. No wonder China's kicking our ass. No wonder the USSA is insolvent. No wonder the Federal Reserve has, $4 trillion or something like that on its balance sheet. No wonder the Fed is the buyer of last resort and providing all liquidity to financial markets with quantitative easing to infinity, ad infinitum. No wonder the European Union is considering a third bailout for Greece. Like there's some kind of hardline negotiations going on. They know exactly what's going to happen. This is all just politicization of the event. If I'm saying that correctly. It's all bullshit. It's all smoke and mirrors being sold to us. Again, Wall Street continues to profit from it. The people continue to be hurt by it. And most in America, this I find so sad and internally demoralizing, are apologetic to these same people that are their rulers, that make up the ruling class, that make up the kings and queens that now run and own Washington, D.C. People like Barack Obama, people like Hillary Clinton, more eager to get involved in the race war that CNN's promoting and that Barack Obama is promoting than they are to open their eyes to the real truth, to what's really happening in the United States of America today. The fact that our freedom is being absolutely and totally destroyed. It's being taken from us in a blink of an eye. It's time we wake up. It's time we realize that we have all the power. It's the people that these elitists are afraid of, the bankers and Wall Street and the politicians are afraid of. It's exactly why they're using these scare tactics and they're using racism as a strategy. And the President of the United States is dropping the N-word live on national television, or the podcast he was on, again, to keep you distracted, to keep the people fighting each other while they engineer and promote their own specific agenda that solely benefits them. Not America, not the people, not me, and not you. I'm Christopher Green. Get this video out everywhere, make it viral, hard hitting it in your face, and click the link below to support our sponsor.